Oh, this was a good book. I enjoyed the heck out of this book. It was a good, quick, easy, fast read. I am enjoying this series immensely. Um, Please, it's nice to meet you. I'm Christina. This is the D. Louise book series. This is where we read book and talk about books. No special effects going on here. No horrible lighting, horrible audio, horrible everything. But I hope you will enjoy the book review. Please check out Star Trek Next Generation recaps on Friday. If then episodes on Friday. If you like this author, then maybe you like that author. And Flashback Mondays, where we talk about a whole bunch of different books from my favorite magazine, RT Book Review. Mystery, sci-fi, romance, historical romance, contemporary romance, paranormal, erotica, and harlequin. Yes, ma'am. So today we are talking about Victoria Thompson, Murder on Fifth Avenue. And I wrote myself a note, and it's not here. I don't know what I did with it. But we're getting, as the Sarah is a midwife. Oh, and before I forget, spoilers, 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 spoilers. I got yelled at the other day. So spoilers, spoilers, lots and lots and lots and lots of spoilers. So Sarah is a midwife, and she had some nursing training, and then she did it with her husband before he died. And during this time, she was estranged from her family, but they're slowly working their way back into each other's lives. So it's probably, non-relevant anymore. But she's also adopted Catherine, a little girl, and she brought Maeve back from the mission too. And Maeve takes care of Catherine while Sarah is off delivering babies. And she also has Mrs. Ellsworth, her neighbor next door, come over and is teaching the girls how to keep house, how to bake, how to clean, that kind of stuff. And she also assists Frank Malloy in his detective work in proving murders. And slowly and surely, she is getting back together with her parents. And this is the beginning. It's not the last. Well, actually, when her father was assisting Frank with solving Sarah Brandt's husband Tom's murder, he started to get a little active in the cases. And her mother is, with the seance that we had in the last book or so, her mother was assisting also in the investigations. And her mother enjoys assisting Sarah in the investigations. And this book, her father gets in on the act too. So Frank is becoming more friendly with the family. He's getting more involved with the family. He's developing a relationship with her parents. And they are getting used to seeing Frank often. And the girls, Maeve and Catherine, also see Frank often. He brings his little boy, Brian. And as you know, Brian is learning sign language in school, and we want to play and learn how to do sign language for my teaching. So I'm very, very microscopically slowly learning sign language. So we're trying it out. Sometimes I forget, or before, because I think it's because or forget, and then this is before. I forget, and this is understand. So we'll see how it goes. One sign at a time. What can I tell you? So we start the book off with, and we have a guest appearance by Gino Donatelli. Gino is an Italian police officer, which is considerably a rare thing. Most of the police officers during this time are Irish, but the previous commissioner, Theodore Roosevelt, wanted to have more cops, more Italian cops, stuff like that. So he was trying, but then he moved up in ranks. He's going to be president one day. So they're slowly getting that on. So anyways, Frank gets a note from Felix Decker. He wants him to come to the Knickerbocker Club. And apparently Mr. DeVries was deceased at the club, and Felix wants Frank to investigate the matter. It was upon further reflection, and it's gonna be a little bit, but apparently he wasn't. They thought maybe he had been stabbed at the club, but then upon inspection, there was no blood on his clothes. It was just on his person. So it was revealed that he was naked when he was stabbed, and it was a very slow bleeding out situation. So it took several hours. And it probably didn't even hurt. He might have felt like he had been pinched or something. So he gets to the club and he sits down and he's reading the paper and having a drink and he dies. So Felix calls Frank to investigate the matter. Frank calls the coroner who, does the autopsy. And Mr. Decker goes with Frank to the residence of the house, and because he wants to be there to inform the family. Mr. Decker wants to experience Frank telling them and all this kind of stuff. And the daughter-in-law laughs hysterically, and they all think that's kind of a weird reaction. And his wife really is like, oh, okay. And so no one is really sad in that house to the reaction that their father is deceased. And Frank and Felix find this kind of odd. And I will tell you, I probably will tell you most of the book, but I will not tell you the whodunit. I always leave that part out. That's the one part I don't spoil, is the whodunit. But I do spoil all of the characters all the time. So Frank questions the family, and while he questions the family, Felix goes to his daughter and gets his daughter involved. Now, mainly, Felix has been against his daughter getting involved, but now he's getting involved and he's getting his daughter involved. This is becoming a real family affair here. So, Mr. Decker talks to his Sarah. And when he gets to Sarah's house, his wife is there too, hanging out with Catherine and Maeve, playing house, playing dollhouse, stuff like that. So Mrs. Decker, Elizabeth Decker, is beginning to think of the kids as her grandkids, and she's treating them as such, bringing them presents all the time and stuff like that. And Mr. Decker also feels that there's something strange going on in that house, in the DeVry house. So Frank questions the valet, and the valet says that Mr. DeVries had a mistress. And so Frank goes to talk to the mistress. And after talking with Roderick, and Roderick confessed to him that Mr. DeVries had a meeting with Salvatore Angadi. And so after Frank talks to Roderick, he goes to see Sarah, and Sarah tells him that her father had already been to her house to ask her and her mom to do the condolence call the next day so they'd be able to ask additional questions of the DeVry mom and daughter-in-law and son. And then Frank goes to see the mistress, and at first she denies knowing Salvatore, but then they kind of loosen up on that. The next day, Sarah and her mom pay the condolence calls, and apparently Mrs. DeVries does not like her daughter-in-law at all. There's really bad tension going on there. So Frank talks to the business partners. He has Gino Donatelli make an appointment with Mr. Salvatore to talk to him. Salvatore confesses to Frank that Mr. DeVries wanted him to kill Mrs. Richmond. Mrs. Richmond turns out to be Garnett, the daughter-in-law's mom. And so Salvatore had gone to Mrs. Richmond to inform her that he had been hired to kill her, but that he was not going to do that. he had no intentions of doing that, and he just wanted to warn her just in case someone else was hired to do that. And so Frank gets, well, I already said that. So then Frank goes to the coroner's office and to find out what he was stabbed with, and it was supposedly one of those long, thin nut pokers thingies. And if I had one, I would show not one of those things, but probably, have you seen the shish kebab piercing things? It was probably something small like that. And we get our first, I think there's only 2 in this book. There used to be more numerous, and I'm sort of missing them. That's the one thing that decreases in the books over the series. I love Mrs. Ellsworth, the elderly neighbor, like I said previously, that comes over and takes care of the girls. But she talks to, we get a little update on Nelson, Mrs. Ellsworth's son. He's keeping company with a young lady. That's all we heard. That's all the information we get. Sarah took Mrs. Ellsworth's coat and called the girls to come down and greet her. A few minutes later, they were in the kitchen enjoying the cookies when Sarah's front bell rang again. This time, a very excited young man had come to tell Sarah his wife was in labor and she had to come right away. I knew it, Mrs. Ellsworth said as they helped Sarah pack her medical bag. I saw 4 crows on the black back fence this morning. You know what they say, 1 crow means sorrow, 2 crows means joy, 3 crows means a wedding, and 4 a birth. What do 5 crows mean? Catherine asked. Maeve said without missing a beat, a mess in your yard. Maeve is good. So Frank goes back to the house again, and Mrs. DeVries is really happy that her husband is deceased. He talks to Roderick about when he could have been possibly stabbed because he had no clothes on. It's revealed that the father was an exhibitionist. He liked to walk around with no clothes on most of the day. So it's all really standard investigation. Her parents take a really good active role in solving the case. And we get another little Mrs. Ellsworth I have to share. Why, Mr. Malloy, what a surprise, she exclaimed, a little breathless from the cold. Malloy smiled. Is it? He knew Mrs. Ellsworth usually kept careful track of the comings and goings on Bank Street. Well, of course, if I'd known you were here, I'd have baked 2 pies, so you could take one home. She handed the basket she was carrying to Sarah. Although I should have known you'd have a visitor because I dropped a spoon on the table while I was making breakfast this morning. It was a large spoon, though, which usually means a family of visitors. She shook her head as if baffled by such a mistake. Mr. Malloy brought Brian with him, Sarah said. Mrs. Ellsworth smiled approvingly. Oh, well, that explains it. How is that darling little boy of yours? And they go talk to Brian. So the mystery continues, and they go to the funeral and check out all the people at the funeral who's attending. The daughter-in-law has a couple of secrets that she's keeping from the family, so they got to discover those secrets. Was she involved in the murder? Was the son involved in the murder? Did the son know about the wife's secret? Did the mother-in-law know the secret? And what do the mistress and Garnett's mom have to do with things? And Frank and Sarah and Felix and Elizabeth have to put all the puzzles together to solve the mystery. It's a real good mystery, and I love the author notes at the end of the book. I really thoroughly enjoy these. They get more and more larger as the series goes on. While I was writing this book, two very interesting and apparently unconnected things happened. First of all, I read the biography of Consuelo Vanderbilt, the heiress who was married off at the age of 18 to a penniless duke who needed her $10 million dowry to fix up his ancestral home. It was in such disrepair that the young couple had to take a year-long honeymoon to allow time for repairs before they could actually take up residence. Their marriage eventually ended in divorce, and Consuelo and the Duke both married for love the second time. The second thing that happened while I was writing this book was that two scandals broke in the news in which powerful men were caught engaging in behavior towards women that was at best reprehensible, at worst criminal. And we might have that going on right now, so maybe we ought to avoid that kind of situation. So, anyways, don't forget to check out Star Trek recaps on Friday. If then Friday afternoons we started with the Bridgertons, if you like them, maybe you like Joanna Lindsay's Mallory's and Stephanie Lawrence Sinsters. If there needs to be a series by anybody, it's got to be the Sinsters. Much longer series than the Bridgertons. There's over 30 books, and it's just a really massively good series. Don't forget Flashback Monday, where we talk about mystery, romance, contemporary romance, historical romance, paranormal, exotica, harlequin, and everything else under the sun. And of course, my daily book reviews. Thank you.